I'd love to introduce our next conversation, building your own brand with fashion designer and stylist, Marquita Hughes. Marquita Hughes is a Dubai-based fashion designer and stylist whose work can be described as a reflection of her intentional exposure and lifelong journey with art, fashion, and travel. Marquita is a multifaceted entrepreneur and well-respected stylist who uses her skills to life coach women and create intuitive pieces as part of a capsule collection to help her clients and customers to achieve their style and fashion goals, one stylish step at a time. Joining her in conversation today, we have Power to Fly's Director of Mentorship, Limor Bergman, who works remotely from her office, her home office in Israel. Limor has over 20 years of experience in software engineering and 10 years of leadership experience. She's passionate about empowering women and helping women grow and excel in their career. So I'll pass the mic to both of you. Thank you for joining us today and kicking off day 2 of our summit. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Maria. And it is such a pleasure to be here. And hi, Marquita. Great to be here with you today. And kind of just to tell our audience, Marquita and I met online via virtual networking, which was great. And now, Marquita, I was very inspired by your story and your success. And I wanted to start kind of with perhaps you can share a little bit about your story, because I think it's very inspiring. You made a lot of changes, right? Both moving to Dubai and also starting your own business. And you're muted, by the way, Marquita. So if you can unmute so we can all hear you.
Oops. Sorry about that. Thank you, Limor, for having me. It's such a pleasure. You guys are also very inspiring to me as well. And as you said, we really connected on our call when we had a chat about everything. I'm originally from the US. Moved around a lot from the East Coast to the West. I've always had a love for fashion, passion for it. And I've spent the last few years really just moving towards opportunities to grow that brand. And so right now, currently, I'm in Dubai because that was the next place that I saw as an opportunity for me to spread, my passion as well as my message to empower women. So I came to Dubai to do my master's in international business and marketing. And I kind of fell in love with the city. It had a beautiful, thriving startup community. They also were really big on promoting up-and-coming designers as well. So it seemed like the right place to go. And they've been very welcoming and it's been very good. So I launched here. And currently I ship online worldwide at the moment. And yeah, that's really where I am at the moment.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who are listening, I really encourage you to look at Marquita Hughes' website. I really like your designs. And again, as I said, it's very inspiring to see your brand. And we all know that, and you started your brand during the pandemic, right, in 2020. Yes. And we all know that the pandemic, on one hand, many people had a very traumatic events, lost their jobs and so forth. But on the other hand, it created a lot of opportunities, both for workplaces and for businesses. And for you, obviously, it opened the door to starting your own brand. Will you be willing to share with us some tips for people, who wants to start their own business? How do you get started? How do you start your own business?
You mentioned about me starting in the pandemic, and it was kind of crazy. And even I thought to myself, it was kind of crazy. But I kind of spoke to one of my mentors about it as well. And we kind of both said that it was actually probably a good time to do it because a lot of people would be afraid. And, the pandemic wasn't going to be something that was going to be around forever. So having that time to kind of stay in the house and really think and plan and strategize, it was really a good time to kind of build the brand so that when everybody was ready to come back outside, that, I would have already started to make some kind of movement in the market. As far as tips, my main thing, and it's something that you and I talked about before, is definitely mentorship. Coaches, people that know more than in the things that you feel like maybe you're weaker in, are the things that you find that are very important for you. Like for me personally, mindset was probably the biggest thing, especially as a creative. You tend to kind of get in your mind about things. You kind of go through times when you feel like maybe you're not as good as you think you are, or your designs are not as good as you are, or, you know, maybe you need more knowledge than you really need to start. A lot of people don't really know, but when I started, I was planning to start in the pandemic, but when I actually launched, I wasn't actually prepared. I was still in the planning stage. And if it wasn't for my coach who kind of told me that you just need to do it, just go and do it. Because I had sales, but I didn't even have my website. It wasn't even up yet. It wasn't ready at the time. So I literally used Google Sheets and different, the Google Suite basically to fulfill my first orders. So that's the number one thing. Another thing that's really, really important, again, it's really, for me, is entrepreneurship is a journey within yourself. And the thing that you need to understand is, why are you starting a business? And, you know, what is the purpose? Are you starting because you are creating something that you want to share to the world? And you want it, it's a way for you to express yourself creatively? Or is it something that you just like entrepreneurship, and whatever you're starting is something that's more driven towards the business or driving profit? It doesn't mean that your passion doesn't get profit, but it's just something to keep in mind, because there's going to be a million things in your business that you're going to need to be responsible for, because you're going to be the marketing person, you're going to be operations, you're going to be all of these different people, and you have to figure out where your zone of genius is and where you're willing to outsource to other people. For example, at the time, I didn't really have money to hire employees, but I looked for interns. I looked for people on Fiverr. I looked for people on Upwork to help me in the things that maybe I didn't quite enjoy to do, or the things that were taking away from the creativity for me, because I design my shoes and I also run the business, and sometimes it can be a lot.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, my internet was bleeping, so I lost you for a second. But you mentioned mentorship, and obviously I'm a great believer in mentorship. That's why I created the program we have at Power to Fly. Do you have any tips, especially for people who start their own business, where they can find mentors who can help them?
So I have personally used many different ways. I've used Facebook groups, so certain groups that have the similar interests. Like in Dubai, I'm in a group that's specifically for women that want to start businesses. So one of my mentors, I actually posted, like, I'm looking for someone who has this specific skill. Can you guys reach out, or can you recommend me to someone? And that particular person kind of DM'd me. I've met mentors off of Instagram. Instagram is like one of my favorites, because you can kind of see what the person's interests are, receipts as they call them, so you can see the success that they've had with other people. And there's also, I think, like I said, specifically the organizations which are similar to where you want to be. There's even some that I use that are in the US. Score. So Score is another really good one. And yeah, I think networking as well is the most important thing. It's just to go and network and be around people that are doing the same thing that you're doing.
Absolutely.
And more successful at it as well.
By the way, I would like to encourage our audience, although we don't see you, I mean, we would very much like to answer your questions live. So feel free to put in the chat your question. The other question I wanted to ask you, I mean, the switch from being an employee to an entrepreneur starting your business is not easy to many people, and involve a lot of uncertainty, right? Because you don't have a paycheck. You move from having a steady paycheck to basically starting from scratch. Do you have any tips how to overcome, that situation of uncertainty?
Well, I would say I've kind of always dabbled in entrepreneurship and being self-employed. And then because I wanted that stability in my business is kind of why I ended up going to getting a job, because I wanted that stability. while I was building the business. And it's always just a trade-off, because part of it is you run out of time when you are not able to fully focus on your business. But then if you are not in a space where you're making enough money with whatever business you're doing, then you're stressed out about having money. So the tips that I would say is to really budget like your money. For example, before, when I was starting, I cut down my living. Even though I was making more money at my job, I had a roommate. I had roommates. I literally didn't spend a lot of my money on anything else except for like the bare necessities. And for some people, maybe that doesn't necessarily work. So it may be a matter of finding another one of your skills. So for example, I used to teach on the side. I used to do websites on the side. I used to do a whole bunch of other little things just to kind of compensate for the money. So that's probably the biggest thing. But I would definitely say there's a conversation which you really have to have with yourself. And whatever you think your budget is, say if you want to leave your job, like you need to probably double it, triple it. So if you think that, okay, I'm going to make sales in 3 months or 6 months, you probably want to double that number when it comes to saving money or figuring out ways to compensate that money, because especially now, it doesn't work the way we think it does all the time. And that's not to discourage people, but it's just to say that that's the reality of it. You never know what's going to happen, what expenses are going to come. And also, one thing other that I would say about that is, if you do have a job, there's a beauty in having a job because you have structure. And with business, when you're working for yourself, you have to force yourself to have that structure.
Yeah, absolutely, right? No one is telling you what to do.
Yeah, you have to force yourself to have that structure. And a lot of these bigger corporations and jobs, they kind of understand there's a reason why they have that structure, and you need it. You need that structure, because if you don't, you'll end up, over working in areas that may not be helpful to you. For example, over planning, spending too much time planning instead of executing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you mentioned also kind of delegating some of the work to, maybe freelancers. You mentioned Fiverr and Upwork. So obviously, when you start, your budget is tight. How you decide if to offload something and what to offload to a freelance or, subcontractor?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I'm going to say that I learned, the biggest thing that I learned, was to have SOPs. Maybe they may not be as detailed as, maybe some Fortune 500 company, but that's the first most important thing, is having standard operating procedures of how you want your business to run. Like, how do you want to deal with your customers? How do you want your brand to come across? All of these different things are number one before you even think about outsourcing to somebody else. I didn't actually do that in the beginning, and I learned a lot of lessons because I ended up spending a lot more time rather than getting time back. But when it comes to looking for them, when it comes to determining what things you delegate, for me, for example, I used to love to be the person to say that I can do everything. Like, I can do numbers, I'm good at numbers, I'm good at this, I'm good at organizing. And I've now realized that it's okay if I'm good at those things, but do I enjoy them? Am I putting the most detail into those things? So I think that is the inventory that you need to do, is to figure out what are the things that you are strong in. And you don't necessarily have to love everything, but if it's something that you just really dread to do, that is something that just takes forever for you to tick it off your to-do list, then it's probably something that you need to consider outsourcing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Outsource what you don't like to do and focus on your passions, right? On designing amazing footwear in your case, and marketing and selling and all of that. And I also wanted to ask you, obviously starting a business is a challenge, but but having a successful business is even greater challenge. What, from your perspective, are some of the challenges business owners face today, especially when everything goes digital?
Digital, it's such a good thing, and it can sometimes be a hindrance, I guess you could say, because for someone like me, for example, like that's a lover of like retail and just the experience with the customers, and seeing them try on your shoes and having those conversations about where they're gonna go with their shoes, that these type of things, not having that because of the digital world, trying to figure out how to create a store or trying to create a boutique in a digital space is probably one of the things. Also, when you talk about a brand, I mean, there's a million brands today. It's so easy now to go and do drop shipping and, make a logo. And so really getting through that noise, figuring out how you kind of find a way to kind of stand out in all of that noise is probably one of the biggest things. And I think it's you have to think about how simple can you make it as well. For example, like when I started, I had like this grand ideas, and some of those ideas I still will do in the future. But I think one of the biggest things is to probably be more simple. Like, for example, my last collection, it was just sandals. Even though I probably wanted to do heels, I wanted to do wedges, I wanted to do all of these different things. But I knew that was going to overwhelm my customers, especially me coming into the market. That was just going to confuse them and cloud them. So I think it's a matter of finding something simple. I mean, look at Apple, or look at some of these other bigger brands. Like, they're very simple in a sense. They stick to the same kind of tune, and they just figure out how to perfect that.
Great. And we have some questions from our audience. What are some of the ways in which we can effectively communicate the purpose of our budding personal brand?
What is the way that you can effectively communicate?
Effectively communicate the purpose of, I don't know what they meant, our budding personal brand.
I think what they're trying to say is, how can they effectively communicate what's the purpose of their brand, like as themselves. That is something that I spent a lot of time on, actually. As I said before, you have all of these things in your mind, all of these ideas, all of these causes, all of these things you want to change in the world and what you want to be as a brand. And I think it's just a matter of journaling, asking yourself the same questions over and over again. What is my purpose? And how can I say my purpose in 1 or 2 sentences? Maybe you can elaborate on it, but the key thing is to be able to break it down into short sentences, because no one's really gonna pick it up. They have the rule of 3, right? So people don't really hear any more than 3 points whenever you're trying to kind of teach somebody or trying to get your ideas across. The same thing goes for a brand or even your personal brand. The most successful people are people that you know them for something, one thing, or maybe the most you can mix 3. You could say, I'm a lover of travel and arts and food, maybe, but more than that, it just gets jumbled and you get confused and other people are confused.
So keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. We have another question. How do we identify some of the elements from our passions and experiences that we can capitalize upon for our personal brand?
Oh, that's a good one. I would also say again that it comes to, I would say, journaling. My coach had me do this thing where it's like a timeline. So you go from, say, your youth, and you go and you look at your accomplishments and you look at the things that you've done, the things that you're most proud of. And once you've like listed them out kind of by year or by every 2 years, you look back at it and you circle the things that are the reoccurring things that come up throughout the time. That's probably the easiest way to do that. It's just taking inventory of yourself.
Absolutely. And I would add to that is that I think we can capitalize on our, values and our, what we bring, what are the unique things that we bring, unique values that we bring to society, and figure out what problems does it solve and how can we help other people.
Yeah, I think the other thing too that I've now kind of realized going through that myself is that there may be similar things that you might not see are unique. So for example, I love fashion, I love art, right? But the way that I'm going to present it and my experiences and my background may be completely different, the way that I interpret it and the way that I express it to the world, just because it's me, is going to be very different than somebody else. So, sometimes we spend a lot of time trying to be unique when by nature we are unique.
Absolutely. And I wanted also to have a follow-up question on that. Like, you launch a footwear brand, and more specifically a sandals, a line. How do you differentiate yourself, right, from the rest of the footwear brands out there? If you have some tips.
Yeah, so basically I came up with this concept, which is called conscious design. A lot of people, when you hear conscious design nowadays, you think only sustainability. But for my brand, it's not just about sustainability. Sustainability is one of the pillars. But when I say conscious design, I mean that when I'm designing, as simple as my designs are, there's a lot of thought into those designs. Where the straps are placed, the length of the straps, the width of the footbed, all of these things I have considered based upon conversations that I've had with myself and hundreds of other women who also have expressed certain things that they want. So that's one thing. The other thing is being someone who is trained in fashion and marketing and management, all of these different things, we kind of look at marketing and advertising as how can we make a person need our product, right? Which is good to a certain extent. But when it becomes a thing where you feel like you need my product to be worthy, or you need my product to do something, I find that a bit problematic, because I believe that, I'm just here to adorn my customers. Like, I'm just here, like, my shoes are just an accessory to the beauty that you already are, the greatness that you already are. So that is the other thing. And then the last thing is around, I don't mass produce. I don't plan to mass produce. I'm conscious about what materials I'm using. I'm conscious about how many products I'm using, conscious about where I'm getting my stuff produced. Are the people getting paid properly? Are they being taken care of? So I think that even though I have a simple product, I am very intentional about everything that I'm doing.
Absolutely. So you listen to your customers and you kind of emphasize their uniqueness to your product, right?
Yes. Yes.
Incredible. We have another question. Great. We love questions. When getting started with freelancing platforms like Upwork, how to get those initial clients? Because initially we don't have the ratings, recommendations, and people lowball us often. So this is more of a, if I understand correctly, the question is more from you freelance on those platforms yourself. You sell your services.
Yeah, I think it's sort of one of those things with anything. Like if you were going to work at a job, or you have to kind of take a little bit of a loss in the beginning, which means that maybe you need to lower your price. Maybe you need to do some things that are, I don't really recommend necessarily free, honestly, even if it's, but very low cost, or maybe bartering. So maybe some of your friends, maybe some of your prior clients, if you can do some work for them and get them to give you reviews. I think that's probably the best way, because people need social proof. So whichever way you can do that. And like I said, it may cost you maybe, you know, doing something for less than what you're worth for only a limited amount of time. I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. And then whoever else you do get on that platform, just be sure that you're following up with them. Make sure you're giving them the best service so that they do give you more reviews.
That's a great tip. I also wanted to ask you, Marquita, why you think it's important, especially for women entrepreneurs, to build their own brand today? And how does it tie up with establishing an idea and identity for women of color?
Oh, this is a good question. So I would first say that 80% of the things that are made around the world are made by women. Women have the craftsmanship, they have the ability. I mean, they make the majority of the things that we use today, whether it's dishes or clothes, all of these different things. They are the ones who are making it, but they're only getting 20% of the income from those products when they go to the market. And so when I found that out, that was kind of heartbreaking, or even a bit surprising to understand that women are really the most laborers in the whole entire world, but they're not seeing the money from it. And I think entrepreneurship gives that empowerment. It gives women the ability to share their talents and their gifts in a way that is more economically empowering. When it comes to women of color, it's the same thing in a sense. You know, women of color are also another minority, just as women are. So imagine being a double minority. Mm-hmm. It's just genuinely means that you have less opportunities to be seen for your talents or your gifts. So entrepreneurship is a way in which women and women of color are able to showcase themselves, because when you're an entrepreneur, you are steering the car, basically, yourself in a sense. So, and especially with the digital world now, you have so much opportunity to reach so many different people, people like you, and maybe people that are different that can benefit from whatever it is that you have to offer.
Yeah, and I think of another aspect by more women becoming entrepreneurs and succeeding, they're giving the confidence and inspiration for other women and women of color that they can do it, that it's something possible for them and for their families to, give their contribution to the world and support their families.
Yeah, representation is very, very important. It's funny because I was just watching King Richard, which is about Venus and Serena Williams. And I remember when I was growing up, watching them come up as athletes and looking at them and saying that if they can dominate that sport, you know, whatever it is that I would like to do in my future, I'm able to do it because I have a mold. So as you said, the more and more women and the more and more Black women that we have that are doing, you know, entrepreneurship and that being successful at it, the more and more little girls will look at that and see that they can also do it, because representation is just important.
Absolutely. And Marquita, I wanted to ask you, how can people be in touch with you? How can they contact you?
This is a very super easy one. So I can be found on all platforms if you just type in Marquita Hughes, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I don't really use Twitter, but mostly my most active is probably LinkedIn and Instagram. And then also I have my website, which is www.marquitahughes.com as well.
Yeah, and I highly recommend everyone to go to your website and look at the incredible designs that you made. So thank you so much, Marquita, for being here today.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure